morning, church. My name is Lori Moreland, and I'm on staff here at Heights Church, and I'm also a volunteer leader with the junior high ministry. This month, we're talking about phenomenal leaders that you're going to find in Scripture, and I have the honor of talking about Moses. If you know Moses' story, he started out being destined for destruction when he was born. He was saved and raised in the opulence of the palace. In his zeal to protect his people, he went out and he murdered a man, and that caused him to have to run, where he spent many years of his life in a foreign land as a shepherd. And then in his later years, he was called by God to come and lead his people out of Egypt. And he was a reluctant leader. And if you can relate to that, if you have ever been in a position where you think, why are you asking me to be a leader? Why do you want me to step up? Don't you see that I'm not fit for this? You might be able to relate to Moses and what he had gone through. When I was looking through his story, I found 4 things that I thought made him a great leader. When he led the people out of Israel, not only did he have to help them get through the desert to protect them from wild animals, protect them from warring tribes that were not friendly to them, but he also had to protect them from themselves. And here are the 4 things that I learned when I was looking through his story. The first one was that Moses always went to God first for direction. He didn't come up with his great ideas. He didn't say, hey, God, I thought of this. What do you think? He went to God first. And then he would listen to God's plan before he moved forward. The second thing that I learned when I was looking through it is that Moses encouraged the people by pointing them to God. When he had taken the people out of Egypt, in the very beginning, and they found themselves trapped at the Red Sea, and they were freaking out, if you can only imagine. Moses said to the people, don't be afraid, just stand still and watch the Lord rescue you today. The Egyptians you see today will never be seen again. The Lord himself will fight for you. Just stay calm. Can you imagine saying that to a bunch of people who are just filled with fear? He'd say, don't be afraid, stand still, watch the Lord, stay calm. And they did. And when they got to the other side of the Red Sea and they saw the water go back and cover the Egyptians that were coming after them, it was through that moment that they believed that they could put their trust in Moses because he put his trust in God. The third quality that I saw that Moses had was that he was willing to plead the people's case before God. And I was thinking about the time that the people had lost their faith in God when Moses went up onto the mountain, and he was gone for longer than they expected, and they just abandoned God completely and built themselves an idol with their own hands. And when Moses came down and he saw what they had done, and he was upset, and he knew that God would completely reject them, and he said, I'm going to plead your case before God. And the 4th thing that I learned was that Moses spent his time in God's presence. In the tent of meeting, often he would go at the end of a day or during the day, and all the people would observe him as he walked into that place. And he would spend time in God's presence talking to God and seeking his counsel. And they knew that he was a man of God. And that brings us right back to the first step, because he spent time with God in God's presence. Then Moses always went to God for direction first. He listened to God before he moved ahead. He was able to encourage the people by pointing them to God. He was able to plead the people's case before God, and then he spent time in God's presence. I think those are some exceptional qualities. They help us to protect one another if we are always going before God and seeking his guidance in the things that we're doing. So if you find yourself in that position, if somebody comes up to you and says, you would make a great leader, before you say, no, I don't know what you see in me, pause and say, what does God see in me and how can God use me? Because I know that God has a plan for each one of us, whether we're leading a group of just a few people or we're leading groups of thousands. I pray that you are blessed this week, my friends, and we will look forward to talking to you again.